Hey everyone, Marieke Blokland here from Studio Bloknote. Welcome to a new raw and messy session. Today I'm having a bit more of a tutorial for you because I got a great question from a groupie. No, that's a running gag between that person and I. She said that she had a question from a groupie. She said, and I asked her if I was allowed to make this video and show her work in this video, and she confirmed that I could do that. That I could make a video with her question and showing her work, and I told her that I wouldn't tell anyone that she's my groupie. And then she replied, I'm proud to be your groupie. So with that said, there are more of you actually. A few of you have really watched everything I made and followed every single course I ever made, and I'm so thankful. And I can't answer every question I get this extensive, but it was a great question that you could also benefit from, as I think that many people who are journals struggle with this. So I thought I'm gonna show you her artwork, read the question, and then just dive into that theme today while you are art journaling, so you can follow along what I'm teaching you here. But you can also, of course, do something else, because this is a raw and messy session. I didn't prepare my answer. It's going to be messy, and I'm just gonna talk endlessly about this because I love to talk about art supplies and art journaling. And you could maybe grab your journal, your sketchbook, a junk journal, maybe some pens, pencils, paint, whatever you want. Okay, I'm gonna show you the work now, and then read the question and then dive into it. I'm not gonna read the entire mail as it was a longer mail, so I tried to rewrite her question, and she asked me to do that, so it's all with her permission. I love making grungy abstract backgrounds with paint, ink and my gel plate. But once the background is done, I get stuck. I have tons of colorful textured pages, but all I can manage are some simple doodles. How can I actually finish a page without always doing the same thing? Thank you so much for that question. I think we all do the same things over and over again, and I understand that it's sometimes hard to break out of that. And it looks indeed to me that your work is very much like meditating. There are certain drawing techniques like Zentangle or neurographic drawing who really follow an exact structure so that you don't have to think. You get a certain set of rules, and that's how you do it, and you always do the same thing, and that works calming. So I guess in a way that you invented something for yourself that works for you to calm down. So you make backgrounds, you doodle on them, you doodle the same patterns on them with a marker and some white, a white gel pen or something, and that calms down your brain. But I understand from your question you want to break out of that. So yeah, I have this background here. It's not a pretty background, but I work a lot in my journal with all these different backgrounds. That is my method, and I want to go through this very much unfinished journal in which I work following my raw art method, which is a method that I developed over the last couple of years, analyzing how I work. And it's also just following a method, but I think it's a bit more playful than yours. In your work, I saw that I'm talking directly to the person who is asking the question, by the way. But of course, this video is for everyone. But for me, it's easier to say you in this video. Just so you know that this is addressed to everyone, but I'm specifically talking to the person who asked this. Anyway, in your work I see that you have a background that is a full spread page. It's really a page covered in ink from corner to corner. And you work with ink, and you set the gel plate and paint, and then you go over it with that material, with markers, I assume. But I want to show you that in my method I have different types of layer that I use in a different order, so it's not always the same. Like here, that's why I'm starting here. I started with mark making with pencil, so I made scratches, and I know it's really chaotic and childlike, but for me this is often a way to also to calm down my nerves. It's frustration and anger that's inside here, but it works beautifully in the background of art. I can imagine I can go over this with gesso, for example. And with that said, I think that when we talk layers, in your work I see that you have, like, the first layer is the paint layer, and then the second layer is the marker. And I don't know if you're familiar with Photoshop, but you work in layers as well. And if you imagine that the first layer is the canvas, if you will, and then all the second layers can be transparent layers on top of each other. You build upon each other, and then you have a final result. I think that those layers underneath can really help you to break that cycle, because what you see here, I'm going to see if I have something translucent. Something translucent. One second. I found tracing paper, which is really going to help me explaining this. What we are, I think, actually are talking about is composition, and I'm not really great at composition necessarily, as I'm not a painter. I consider myself an artist, but I've always been more of a graphic designer, and since I work on pages, I see it as a layout. So not necessarily a composition as in a painting. You have traditional compositions for paintings, and in abstract art, where there are no rules, it's hard to find a nice composition. And for an art journaler, we often talk about layout. And the reason why I took this translucent paper is so that I can draw on this scratchy, ugly background, so that I can show you the composition here, because here is quite an empty spot, so everything is going around this empty spot, and it's far from finished, and it's really child's play. But what is happening here, that we often read a composition from left to right, and then our eye often starts here, sometimes here. It depends a bit on how the pages or the image is built, but I find that I often start here or something in the middle. But when you analyze and look at something, your eye naturally goes around. And let's say that the catching point was here, because there's something black happening here where the rest is red. So this is probably the point that your eye is drawn to automatically, and that all happens in a split second without thinking. But your eye starts to read this, often in this direction, and it's the direction of your eye is sort of going this way, and that often happens also in other works of art. Let me show you if I have something more finished. That must be something, that's because not everything is good enough to explain it. Well, yeah, this one might be a good one on the first page, because if I turn this page, I tend to see two things at a glance, and one is a sentence, and a sentence I start reading, I'm not starting here, my brain automatically, because I've been taught that we are reading from left to right, I start to read the entire sentence, so in a way my eye is going over it like this, but there's also something happening here, and I sort of see those things at the same time. So imagine you open the book and your eyes start to scan the page, what is happening. And what is happening is that you either start here or here with that doll, but either way you start to read this, go over the doll with your eyes, and then you start to scan what other things are happening. There's something happening here, there's something happening here, and your eyes just naturally go over it. It's not like you start here, then close your eyes and open them up again. Your eyes are made this way to sort of roll around, and that natural movement of the eye is something that professional artists and designers know about, and we naturally play with that, and that in fact is actually what composition is. Because even if you start to follow the golden ratio, the golden ratio is also this shell shape, and that's also because it's a very mathematical theory, but in a way it's exactly that your eye is making that circular motion, and that's just how human beings scan images. And you don't have to use that flow, because you can also deliberately put something really straight in the middle or really along the sides where there's nothing happening and tease the eye. But I naturally tend to, because I'm art journaling a lot, and I have 2 pages that I call a spread. Here, for example, you start here, there's nothing really happening here except some pattern, it's really empty, and I'm forced back here, so there's a lot happening here, less happening here, and it's also a bit underneath. Here it's more centered to this side, and this is a little bit more empty. Still there's things happening, there are stripes here. So if I open this page, there is something more happening here and less happening here, but still the subtle patterns here invite you to look around. And this is really just straightforward, one doll here, one doll here, but you still go back and forth. There's something happening yeah, between those dolls that you go from left to right and to left again. But there's always something happening in a different composition. So what I see in this two works is that you have these spiral shapes. I'm just going to copy some elements out of it, just to also have some similar patterns here quickly. Well, just something quickly. Let me see if I have a sort of background. I don't have similar backgrounds, or this is maybe not a good example because it's a junk journal and the pages aren't even. Okay, this might not be the best example as it's not really a colorful, pretty background, but it's a background. The rest has already too much happening. This might also work. I could do this one. Okay, this one is lighter, so it's a bit more. I think you see better what I mean. But in a way, what you do is you make this one background like this. It might be a bit more colorful, and then start drawing the doodles on it, and then maybe add some details with a white pen, and that's it. So those are actually sort of the steps that you do in the work that you showed me. And what you could do is change the order of how you do things. So you could, for example, let me see if I can find an empty spot here. What you could do is first draw the doodles. That's already a first step. How to break out of that, you always do that same thing. So instead of making the background with ink and paint, you start doodling first. So that allows you to not always do that same thing of making a background and then add doodles on it. I'm going to use similar patterns as that's fun. I also really like circle patterns myself. But if you come back to something like this, you have to force yourself to work with what is already there. So instead of having that background and that is from corner to corner filled with paint and add a layer of doodles, you have the layer of doodles, and now you have to work with this and work around it, work over it. And of course you can cover things up, but it would not be nice to cover this up entirely. So if I start playing with paint over something like this, it's nice to cover parts up, but you don't want everything covered up. So I probably just make a blotch here, maybe a bit more here as well. So yeah, now I have the doodle pattern and the blotch of paint, And maybe I have played with the gel plate. Well, I have actually, but mine is not really colorful. I have played with black gouache and it did this really weird thing. But let's say this is a really pretty gel printed background in colors or not, or in black and white. Can be anything. Mine are often red, grey, black, white. I have more of these collage sheets. I'm looking for scissors. Can't find scissors. Oh, here are scissors. Okay, let's say that this is the gel plate print that you would normally use as a background, and maybe you start cutting shapes out of it. And I love also to just cut out circle shapes or squares, rectangles. I don't know if you like collage at all, but instead of using them as a background, you could now use them to stick somewhere in the work, and you have a third layer already. I love to stick the collage elements with a gel medium or a fluid acrylic medium. In this case I'm using the fluid because it's a really thin paper here. I'm gonna just stick this one here with the gel medium, and then maybe some shapes here. So it's all still abstract. There's no figure here. But I used a part of a background, cut it out and sticked it on this thing. And you see, because I made this blotch here, instead of from corner to corner, I have already this fun layout to work with. So probably I'm gonna fill this also with color or paint. There's so many things that could start happening around this. I could still fill the entire page, but because I focused on a part of the page and think more in the terms of a layout, I have to force myself to do something different here around this than I would do on this. So maybe I could start adding something here, more doodles with markers, or maybe instead of the black markers you could also start to use a different material instead. So I really love to switch from my favorite black brush pen to colored pencils. Love using colored pencils. I also really love to use crayons. This is my box with black crayons. I don't have ADHD, but I have a box with black crayons in different brands. That is also, by the way, something really fun. A fun idea for you to switch materials and see what they do for you. So let's say if you have that colored background from corner to corner. Okay, this is a background, and you have the black crayon instead of the black marker. And you start doing this already in a different material. That is already something that is giving you different texture. It's giving a bit more arty lines that could be fun to work with. So that is something that is worth a try. But what I also, because now I also feel like these are pretty much all the layers you have, and what I would usually do is think more layers. I think that is already going to help you a lot to start thinking more in layers, in terms of, because instead of that colored background with those shapes, what is happening if you would repeat those shapes as if you are layering them? What could be really fun, because I really like this type of shapes as well. What could be fun, for example, is if you have your page with the backgrounds and the black lines, and I all assume that you want to make that abstract kind of work, to just add some gesso again or paint and just start adding things and not go over it from corner to corner, but just leave some parts open. I maybe put a bit too much white here. So I'm covering parts up here and then go more around it here, leave a bit more open. I'm gonna take off a bit of that white paint. That's a bit too much. So what you have now is that part of the background is still here inside that shape. Parts you covered up here is some bit of a mess, and you allow this to dry. I dried it a tiny bit with the heat tool, but if I would repeat myself now and, for example, put this here, something really interesting starts to happen. Do you see it? So I could now, if I take that black crayon again and repeat the exact same thing here, there is something interesting starting to happen. I don't know yet where this is going, but it could be a nice starting point again to continue building something like this. Another fun tip I could give you is to also think in big and small, because what I saw on the background, you have this quite big shapes, but you could also make them really small. So I have this big black crayon, but I could also pick a nice black, that was brown, black pencil, a black colored pencil. Is this black? Yes, this is black, but it has no point. It's called the raw and messy session, so I'm allowed to do this. Looking for sharpeners on my really messy desk. You don't see it, but the desk is really messy. So I have these large round shapes with a black crayon. I could also add the same pattern with a pencil now around that and start repeating myself, but yeah, because it's a more subtle line work than that big ones, it's those shapes start to communicate with each other. I say communicate because yeah, that's the sort of language artists use, but they're not literally talking to each other, so that you know that I'm not like thinking that these two talk to each other, but in a way you could say that this big fella says, hey, I'm the big guy, and these are all the tiny cute guys, and they say, oh, we're family. Yes, it's a bit tiring sometimes to be me. I hope you know what I mean. Okay. So, yeah, this is something to maybe consider and play with. I myself would now probably add another layer. I would really, because that is something that I love to do. But I didn't really use a lot of color here. But to me, this really shouts watercolor to me now. I have my absolutely favorite black Daniel Smith here. I love the black Daniel Smith, and I use it a lot in mixed media, but of course watercolor is not really suitable for mixed media because it does this. The gesso doesn't really work well with watercolor because you get these blotches, but that's exactly what I like. And this black Daniel Smith is a highly granulating paint. Granulating means that you get these nice little spickles. It's a sort of grainy effect, and you call that granulating with an expensive word. This is a trick that I often do in my work. I start covering up parts, and not everything, but just parts. And on darker backgrounds I tend to cover things up with a color. In my case, that color is most often grey or red. Or on a dark background I could also use white, and yeah, on a light background I will often use a black, or sometimes metallics, silver, gold. I really like that as well. So and yeah, I love to think in positive and negative shapes. So that is something that you could play with, that instead of one flat layer you start to darken things and lighten things. That works really nice on a color as well. And I can imagine that if you have a page like this, for example, and you have this blue purplish color and this yellow here, that you may lighten parts here with that yellow, and then darken parts here with that purple, so that those two pages are also start to do something together, that it's not like the left page and the right page in a different color, but that you sort of have elements of the color there returning in that page. And that's the same counts for this. It might be nice to, for example, add some pink elements in the circle shapes here, and maybe some more purpley things in the lines here. So I can imagine that there's something, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just, and it can be really translucent, but just something that makes it less flat, a bit of like shading, if you will. But that's making the lines works more pop from the pages. What I think many art journalists do is that they do this. You have paint, and this can be any color. I'm just using black to exaggerate my answer, because I put paint on my page, and now I'm going to spread that paint out. And this can be a pattern, a color, it can be stamps, but to give you an idea, and again, this is really black and white, literally, haha. But this is really exaggerating the answer. This is what I see many people do, is that they spread it out evenly from corner to corner until everything is covered. But the thing is, people, an art journal is not a wall. You don't have to paint it from corner to corner. So what if I would, I'm again adding a bit of paint to my page. What if I would just do this instead? What if this was my background? And again, this can be any color, but what would happen if you start working on this? You have a lot more open space and you can start to play with it. If you like bold backgrounds with lots of color or lots of things happening already in the background, and let's say that you really want to almost spread it out on the entire page, what if you stopped here? This could be already, and you can of course add things here later, but having a layout that is more like this or this is already more interesting to start working on than this. Don't be afraid to leave things open. Or for example, and this is not finished at all, but it could be an abstract art journal page, but I have these blotches on the background, and then I added this red shape here on top, and then I started to add the round elements that I made with a gel plate. But that way you have already more layers going on when you start adding your doodles on top. This is far from finished, of course, but I'm just giving you quickly some ideas that you could do to break that cycle of doing the same thing all over again and again and again. I have one more last tip for you for that, and that is start a sketchbook. You know, I'm an art journaler. I love to art journal. I do most of my things in art journals, but I also still have a sketchbook. I have a couple of those, bigger, smaller ones. But yeah, this is a good example, by the way. You know how I love drawing dolls. That's not abstract, of course, but sometimes I see things by other artists on the internet, and I think in this case I saw that someone did a mouth like this, and I really liked that mouth. So I wanted to see if I can use that mouth in my own work and make it my own for some don't you like these? These are really nice. So anyway, what I did is I drew that mouth. I'm not now going to use it in black, but I drew these red circles. I drew them a lot on the pages, and I started to quickly doodle the same type of doodle and started to tweak tiny things. So I made a face like this. Then I drew a long face, I made a weird head, and I changed the eye for a swirl. Here I have this funny pop eye, a popping eye. Here I added more of a sort of tattoo-ish things. This guy is a bit cuter. This one is looking angry. This one has really tired eyes. You know how I love that red X. I drew that here on his cheek. Here I made the red X into an eye. So, and this is maybe drawn in 15 minutes. But I challenged myself to sketch things really quickly using that same element. So I can imagine, because here I drew that shape of the mouth, but if you want to do something abstract with those circle elements, I am assuming that you do want to use that kind of elements, although I also saw that star symbol, the 5-point star, that you can challenge yourself to just take a pen. It could be a black fine liner, but you have those main elements and you come with as many different ideas as you possibly can with similar shapes. So what I'm thinking now is that I found it hard to do different things, so I was all of a sudden thinking maybe I should think more in patterns, and instead of this was more a pebble shape instead of a circle, and all of a sudden it's starting to turn into sort of pattern. So instead of those more labyrinth-like shapes, you could also think more in patterns and repeat those patterns, and maybe because that would make something nice as well if you have this journal spread with colors. Instead of those large elements, you start filling it with pattern, and then still there could be a large shape on your page like you do, but instead of filling the entire page, you could also maybe just think in small and large things. This, by the way, because you see me drawing this little layout thing, this is a really good exercise as well. Oh, this is not really a page, but this was something where I quickly drew all these rectangular shapes and started adding different patterns. I still have to add 4, obviously, but I quickly wanted to note down different ideas for patterns. Here I have the exact same doll with the exact same techniques. I did everything the exact same way except for the line work. So here I used a brush and ink. Here I used my favorite zebra pen. This is my favorite pencil brush pen that you saw me using. Here, this one. So I did the exact same things, but then with 6 different versions of the line work. Well, yeah. But that could be a nice idea for you to learn to think in layouts, that you make these tiny thumbnails for yourself and force yourself to do something in a thumbnail size first. So you would normally work like that, really large shapes on the backgrounds, but that you start for yourself to see if you can think of layouts that don't go from corner to corner, but only use a part of the page, leave parts empty. And maybe also, because now I'm adding these squares, I see that because all around shapes I miss something that is the opposite of a round thing. You don't have to, because there are many artists who work in patterns with round shapes and do not add anything rectangular. Thinking more in contrast can help as well. Because now I have these shapes, and around the shapes I make it a bit darker so that they can, oops, I'm not filming this properly, sorry, but around this I make it darker so that the shapes itself can pop out, but with just making a page in your sketchbook with many very quickly ideas for that, you can train yourself to start challenging yourself to think of new ways that are just little tricks that you can do when you are getting stuck. I'm seeing these dolls and I really love them. I made them a couple of days ago, and it's like the return of the pink, because you know that I've worked in grey, black and red for years now, and if you follow me for longer, you know that I used to use a lot of pink, neon pink, and I had this neon pink crayon a while ago, and I drew around a little doll, and I thought that the red was so much fun with the pink. It's like sort of aggressive and cute at the same time, and yeah, I really love this. It's really nice. I don't know where it's going, but this was just a little sketch, but I love the warm grey, red and pink here a lot, but that's something for another story. Okay, thank you so much for this long session. I rambled on and on about the same thing, and I really hope that you this all made sense, and that you have some ideas for how you can still stay true to yourself, work abstract, and because what I really think it's beautiful that you can use the art that you make to calm down your brain. That is what she wrote in the mail, by the way. I don't think it was in the actual question, but yeah, it's good to stay true to yourself, but it's also good to challenge yourself to do new things. So thank you so much for asking this question. For me, it was also nice because this gave me a lot of direction in this video. I started to notice that in the past few raw and messy sessions, I sort of lacked direction. It's also because I promised myself I wanted to make these videos weekly, to just put on the camera, start doing something. But I actually really liked to use this question for a raw and messy session, because I noticed that yeah, I can really dive into it. I love to dive into those things and really see how I can help you. I know there are probably tons more ways to break down a cycle, and there are so many more things that you could do, but I think that these few easy things might just help you to break out of something. And just remember that change often comes slowly, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. I hope this helped all of you, and I will see you again in a new raw and messy session soon. Ciao!